Season, and that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for Outdrank the Coverage in 2023. Is your demanding work lifestyle in need of fire-resistant clothing that can keep up? Well, L4FR clothing should be your go-to for quality, affordability, safety, and style. L4FR was founded by a third-generation oil field worker who is also a veteran. Thus, this company has a deep appreciation for reliability and longevity, all while we provide first-rate customer service. Our durable apparel will serve you well for many years to come, whether you're working on a pipeline, a lineman climbing utility poles, or in any other environment requiring fire-resistant apparel. L4FR has you covered. Our apparel is tough enough to resist hazardous conditions while still providing high comfort and style. L4FR provides clothing options to ensure your safety and comfort, whether you're on the job or not. To view our complete inventory of flame-resistant garments, please visit our online store at l4frclothing.com or give us a call at 817-757-4933.
Hey, I mean, that was a good point.
I think we might start seeing some go back. It was the first crazy week of college football, and the NFL hit week 2. The Cowboys are 2-0. It's Victory Monday. It's Outdrank the Coverage. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here. Intern Noe, and we're here to talk a little college football and pro football. Now, for this episode, we're just kind of trying new things out with the college side of the show. We're doing it all in one show. We're just going to see how that works out compared to doing it in 2 different shows. Anyway, Intern Noe, how are you doing, and what are you drinking?
Hey, buddy. How are you, man? I'm doing well. I'm drinking Woodford Reserve. It's double oaked barrels. Just means that's just been aged in 2 different barrels, essentially.
Wow.
How about you? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Dr. Pepper. Went over to intern Noah's house yesterday for NFL Sunday, and the shots were flowing. The naps were strong. The food was great, and I woke up with a headache. And I also woke up at 4. I'm on this weird thing where I'm waking up at 4 in the morning right now. I go through that during the season. So I already needed a Dr. Pepper at 11 a.m. as we record this. But yeah, we're going to try to do this for this episode and just see what we think about it. We're going to put the college football first. This was the first week of the season, though, and you usually have 2 or 3 where, you either had upsets or a bunch of almost upsets. A lot of the top 10 teams, you could say, kind of were lethargic in how they played. What were your overall thoughts on it?
It was better than it was last week. I mean, last week, both college and pro was a little sloppy.
Yeah.
But this week, there was a lot of close games, a lot of scares, which makes me think that there's going to be a lot of upsets coming forward this season. I watched the Florida State Boston College game. That was probably one of my favorite games of the weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously, the whole country is focused on Colorado right now just because of Deion Sanders.
We'll talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah, and that ended up being a pretty good game. So kudos to Norwell and Colorado State for actually trying and playing well and having some up their sleeve. I mean, that bye week kind of helped them a lot. So, but yeah, a lot of just like Alabama playing bad. Tennessee played bad. It was a rivalry game against Florida, but still,
A Florida team that had looked like crap against Utah 2 weeks ago. And then they beat, a number 11 team. But I think we're seeing with Tennessee, and this is nothing against Tennessee, but they haven't figured out, offensively, they're nowhere near where they were last year. And their defense was okay last year. Their offense covered that up. And so far this year, like with this Florida game, their offense could not get going.
yeah, I couldn't get going at all. I guess another big one would be Georgia. They were struggling a lot against South Carolina.
That's one of those you and I were talking about. They looked really bad, but then I had to remind myself that South Carolina beat them in 2019. South Carolina is not a bad football team, and B, they're the team. Every team, every good team in every conference always will have that one bad team or one average team that just kind of can poke them. And South Carolina is kind of like that with Georgia. They always seem to give Georgia a really good game. But in saying all that, Georgia hasn't looked good, in my opinion. And I mean, that was their toughest opponent today, but they haven't looked good to start the season.
New quarterback, new offensive coordinator. It's a lot of moving parts there. They're trying to learn on the go. Luckily, they haven't had too hard of a schedule to start the year.
Yeah.
But once they get into SEC play, which they did this weekend, it's going to start getting tougher and tougher for them.
I mean, is it? I mean, we can talk about that. The SEC to me has kind of been very man. And good comparison is you see what Florida State did to LSU, and then you see what LSU did to Mississippi State. And Mississippi State's supposed to be a solid team again this year, and it goes back to, I mean, honestly, right now, still, let's go ahead and turn into Colorado. Right now, the Pac-12 is the conference that's looked the best from top to bottom since at the start of this year, and it continues as Colorado hangs on to beat Colorado State 43-35 in double overtime. That game, Colorado State there for a minute looked like they were going to take the game. I don't care what your opinions are of Deion Sanders as a coach. He has absolutely flipped college football on its head, at least early, and it's fun. It was fun to care what Colorado and Colorado State was. And you said it best. Give Norvell credit. For all the talk about, oh, this motivates Deion and this, well, I thought he did a good job of turning that against and getting his squad motivated, a little too motivated at times. That was an ugly game flag wise. You could tell that he preached making this game personal, and there was a couple bad things. Travis Hunter gets hurt from a dirty hit. I do think it's funny though. People are trying to get that guy suspended for the year, and it's like, okay, it was a bad hit, but come on, folks. Like I say, whether you like it or not, I love it. I love what Colorado's doing this year.
Oh, me too. The swag it's just unreal. The attention they're getting. I mean, for a home opener or a home game against a rival in Colorado State, without Deion, without the hype, they would not have had a primetime show in here. It would have just been just another game.
It had been just another game. It wouldn't have sold out. I know people were like, "Oh, they're storming the field." Look, they have not done anything in 10 years, maybe even longer. They're allowed to storm the field whenever they want. Now, in saying all that, it's going to be a hard fall because, look, I love what they're doing. And I think maybe they can keep it competitive with Oregon, and maybe they can keep it a little competitive with USC. But
well, I mean, you saw what Oregon did to TCU, or not TCU, but the Texas Tech. That was a pretty close game.
Yeah, that's on the road against a team that had just lost to Wyoming. I can see Oregon that had trap written all over it, and Texas Tech's a good enough team to trap a team. But at the end of the day, if you're down 2 scores to Colorado State, that's going to become a concern because I'm not worried about the offense. I think Colorado will be able to score with anybody. The problem is when Caleb Williams and that USC offense, or when Chip Kelly and his UCLA offense with Washington. Washington might be the best team in all the United States, but especially in the Pac-12 right now. When you look at what they can do, I just want those that are in Deion's corner to still be in his corner when they're maybe sitting at 4-7. or 4-6, because I think that's still about where Colorado will end up.
And just to correct myself from last week, the Washington Huskies receiver, his name is pronounced Rome Odunze.
Yes.
I apologize.
His family's going to be mad.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll notice me in a Starbucks. I got noticed today. The craziest thing, whenever I wake up and have time during the weekend, Mondays is usually, this is like the only show that I actually record is the shows that we're doing. So it's a little bit more relaxed for me on Mondays. And I like to walk up to the Starbucks and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to the guy that always fixes my drink. We're just talking Cowboys and stuff. And this guy he kind of looked at me a couple times and, I sent out all my signals like I'm available. Oh, no, I'm sorry, different show. But no, I was just, I kind of noticed he was, and there's only 3 people and it's 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's looking at you, you notice. And finally he just said, do you work with blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, you just look so familiar. He goes, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a podcaster and I talk. You're the NFL drinking show. Yeah, that's where my life is going. Thank you, sir. So, Stephen, I know you'll be listening. I'm glad to said hi. I was going to get a picture with him, but I forgot to. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool that I got noticed for our show. But anyway, just like Dion does now. But no.
So you're saying you're comparing yourself to Deion Sanders right now.
I am the prime time of Outdrink the Coverage. Without me, last year Outdrink the Coverage was 1-9, and here I am. I love the story. You can see that a lot of the people. First off, you and I kind of touched this last week, and this is true. And I think everything is like this at the moment. But this has become a class political thing. You can see the people that dislike Dion and where they're probably swinging on the political thing, and then the people that like Dion where they're swinging, and that's great. But I just hope the people that when they start to struggle don't, because a lot of times the things that you think are quirky and cool now, that they'll turn it against you when you start to fail. And I still think at the end of the day, Colorado, and it's not a top line talent. You've heard Grant Goodwin and I talk about this all the time. All D1 teams that are competitive have 20 to 25 players that are good players. Great teams have 40 to 45. And that's where Colorado lacks right now. They've got 22 guys, well, 21 because Hunter plays both ways, and he's going to be gone for the next 3 weeks, it sounds like. But they've got 20 to 24 guys that can do stuff. The problem is they're about to play teams that can roll out a second complete defensive line, a second complete set of linebackers. And that is where we're going to see Colorado start to fail. It's not going to be because of what they're doing, like Dion's doing. It's just simply they still need a couple more years of recruiting cycles.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I think with his ego and swag, everybody's thinking national title, but I mean, just making a bowl game would be a big improvement for Colorado this year.
Oh yeah, I still think that that's they could get in with the 6 and 6s and 5 and 7s with certain rules, but yeah, you're exactly right, but it's that adjustment of expectations, and if they keep winning, especially if they do pull off that upset against Oregon, holy crud, then it's going to get deafening. And like I said, I love that. That's the one thing that college football has over the NFL. You'll get teams like the Lions are kind of the team, but that's still kind of just Detroit fans, and everybody else is like, oh, that's cute. In college football, when you get these teams that have these stories like this, they truly become national. They can be loved or hated, or in this situation, both. And it only does anything. All it does is make college football better, in my opinion.
And it expands from football. Just think about women's basketball this season. No one would have cared about Iowa, but they had this baller named Caitlin Clark. I've never seen a woman play basketball that well in my life. And her little drama with LSU and Angel Reese kind of making the headlines. And that ended up being the most watched women's game of all time.
But let's be honest. Again, that goes back to what we talked about with Dion. Yeah. There's a dividing line of who liked Iowa and who liked LSU.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes it sucks for real life, but it does make the sports better because I mean, I've never seen so many Iowa fans from East Texas. That's all I'm going to say about that time. I mean, and that's how it is with the Dion. You see who love Dion, and you see who, and some of the people that love Dion are, like I said, they're going very hyperbolic of, oh, he's going to replace Nick Saban. I don't think he would replace Nick Saban anyway, and the reason is I don't. Dion doesn't strike me as someone that wants to come after a great coach. You proved nothing in that. You just proved, okay, you just took what he built and you carried it.
Yeah.
I don't see Dion being that type of coach. Now, I could see Dion being the guy that comes in two coaches after Saban, and let's say it's Will Muschamp, because that's the big report now. I don't get it, but sure. But it's Will Muschamp, and he doesn't. And then Steve Sarkisian or Hugh Freeze, they give it a try, and they don't do great. And Alabama's kind of back to being a top 25 team instead of a top 5 team. I could see Dion 10 years from now doing that, but I don't see Dion going, okay, I'm going to follow in the footsteps of a legend and just literally just hold his water. Like, Dion gets no credit for that.
No, because he's very confident in himself. I think he feels that he's the one that's going to create
Exactly.
a program. He's not going to just continue a great program. He wants to build one from the ground up and make it his own.
Exactly. And I just don't see him doing that but speaking of that, and again, this is why I love our college show. It's very fluid in what we want to talk about. Do you believe that the reports that this is Saban's last year? I've even heard some claim that, and the part of it tracks, that Saban and Belichick are kind of like, they're really, really close. And there's even been some that they're both like, okay, we're going to go out the same year. But I don't know about that. But as far as Saban, how many years do you think Saban still has left?
Well, he's born on Halloween of 51, so he's 72. He'll be 72 next month.
Yep.
I really think maybe 3 more years.
See, I'm like you. I think 75 is a good number for him. First off, we'll go ahead and talk about them. Their game wasn't pretty against South Florida, but it was also like really, really bad rain, and it just wasn't a good game. But this whole idea, like, people are acting like now that Alabama's oh my gosh, they're a 7-4 team or something. I said it last week. I still think that they're going to run most of the SEC, because again, the SEC outside of Georgia, maybe Florida's back, maybe LSU's back, maybe Alabama. Who else in the SEC scares you?
Not really. I mean, what Hugh Freeze is doing right now is great, but it'll be another couple of years before Auburn becomes a perennial power again.
Lane Kiffin's always fun at Mississippi, but he's kind of become he's the hated version of Mike Leach, where he's going to go somewhere and he's going to have great offenses. They're going to be fun. Even if you don't like him, you kind of go, okay, that was a pretty funny thing. He's trolling Nick Saban. But at the end of the day, they're not going to win enough games year in and year out consistently. They'll pull 1 or 2 upsets, but then they'll get upset themselves. And even like, Tennessee proved that their offense is not as good this year. I still don't trust Florida. I mean, again, I feel that Texas and OU are actually going into the SEC at like the perfect time, to where they're not going to both start winning it for the next 10 years, but they're going to immediately step in and be competitive. Like, you're going to see, like, it wouldn't shock me that in the next 5 years, you see Oklahoma or Texas, one or the other, in the SEC, if they're doing a title game, or just calling them the West champion, 3 of the next 5 years easily.
Well, right now there's 7 teams in each division of the SEC, so I'm wondering if Texas and Oklahoma are going to be in separate divisions, or they're
going to be in the West. They're going to be in the West.
So they have to move some of those West teams over to the East, possibly.
Yeah, I think they've already set the all that, or they're going to go for one big conference. But yeah, they already said if they keep it split, Texas, A&M, Oklahoma, LSU, and I think it was the 2 Mississippis will be the West side, and that makes sense.
Yeah,
and then you pull, because Alabama's never made. I mean, you had to do it the way they do it geographically for them, but Alabama over there has always been kind of weird. But I just feel that the SEC's down right now, and I'll still contend that it's probably a lot further as far as past the top 2 teams for a lot longer than people want to admit. But anyway, Baylor. I watched a little bit of the Baylor game. They beat Long Island University. I only knew Long Island University from basketball. No, I really didn't watch the game. Richard Reese and Dawson Pendergrass. Richard Reese is 4A from Belleville.
Mhm.
Dalton Pendergrass is from Mineola. That's 3A. And if you don't know, Grant Goodwin and I cover 4A, 3A, and 2A each and every week on Sideline to Sideline. But anyway, yeah, two good running backs. But man, Baylor's so bad.
Yeah.
And I say that, and Texas plays them this week, and you know what'll probably happen. But no, it's funny. I was reading an article about Texas Tech at 1-2 and Baylor at 1-2, but how they feel different, and they do. Even though there's both of their seasons have started out literally the same, they both lost in week 1 in upsets. They both lost in week 2, but in really good games that they both probably should have won against Pac-12 teams. But Texas Tech, they just signed their highest recruit ever. Texas Tech still has this idea and they even call it the brand with Joey McGuire and how they're doing things. Baylor feels rudderless right now. And this is why when everybody was crowning David Arianda 2 years ago, I'm like, he's doing it with Matt Rule's players. Let's see what happens when he starts having to do it with his players. And we're seeing it now, man. Baylor's just in a really bad spot right now.
Yeah, they are, and I'm not sure what direction they're going to go in over the next few years. As long as they finish 500, he'll remain head coach going in the next season.
You
But
think?
but after that, I'm not sure what else is going to happen. They'll definitely. You're playing Long Island University. You're only scoring 30 points. That's pretty bad.
And it was a lot closer than in that game. There was a rain delay or a weather delay, and when they came back out, Baylor kind of wore them down. But yeah, it was a lot closer than that 30-7 score. Like I said, I watched like most of that game. I don't know why either.
You're probably just watching at it while doing other stuff.
Sadly, no, dude. I was literally watching the game. Like I got into it. First off, I like Long Island University's uniforms. I also was wanting to see Pendergrass and Reese because I followed both of them in our high school shows. But also, it was just it was amazing to watch Baylor, a team that 2 years ago defensively was one of the best teams in the country, having a Long Island University offensive line at times just not manhandle them, but neutralize them. It was blowing my mind.
Them and Oklahoma State, two of the better defenses.
And speaking of Oklahoma State,
Mm.
how much time does Gundy get with this, man? Like this is 3 years now that they've, that they just, I don't know. The offense has just completely went to crap.
Yeah.
Defense is still pretty decent. But offense is, and I don't mean like went to crap in today's era. I'm talking about like even in the 80s, they're bad right now, like 7-10 points. I mean, this is an offense that, man, you used to think about, man, we're playing Oklahoma State. We have a good defense, but we're still going to have to score 40 to win the game. And it just feels like it almost feels like they're just comfortable now. Like Gundy's been there. He's the icon now of the Oklahoma State. They love his sense and sensibilities. We're fine. We don't know what we're going to do in the new Big 12. And to me, it's the exact opposite. Like, man, you're about to, and I know you're going to lose Oklahoma, which is your big rival, but you're losing Oklahoma and Texas. The top of the conference has just been taken off. This is when Oklahoma State needs to be being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think keeping Gundy's that.
I mean, it's an embarrassing home loss. They lost to South Alabama 33-7. This should have been a reverse in scoring. But they are not blocking well. They had too many penalties. This was the problem they had going into this game, but they didn't have tough competition to start the season. So, and this is not really tough competition either.
No.
But it's just the embarrassing home loss. They have a bad quarterback play. I'm trying to think of what else happened there. I know they had the muff punt. But all these mistakes were masked in the prior couple of weeks just because they won. But they just got exposed. So I'm not sure what happens the rest of the season, to be honest with you.
Let's see. TCU beats Houston in the Big 12 opener. Chandler Morris throws for 314 yards, an interception, and 2 touchdowns. This is good win for TCU, but this is, again, Houston with Dana Holmgren. This is why you don't fire a guy because he's winning but hasn't won enough, because there's no guarantee that your next hire will improve that. Yeah. And they literally got rid of Major Applewhite because he was only winning 9 games a year for a program. And this is what you get. But for TCU, good bounce back. I don't think it speaks anything of them. I don't think Houston's that good. Kansas holds on to beat Nevada 31-24. Devin Neal and Daniel Hishaw Jr. combined for almost 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. I always like to say it's a good professional win. Missouri beats Kansas State in the border war 30-27. Harris Mevis' 61-yard field goal as time expired. I watched that, and that was one of those classics. Oh, it's not going to make it. Oh, it is going to make it. I mean, it was, and just that was a fun game right there. That's what when you think of a rivalry game, that's what a rivalry game is right there.
I did like their helmets, Missouri's helmets.
Yes, very much so. For Kansas State, this is them. I mean, they're gonna look like this and lose to Missouri, but I guarantee you when they play Texas, it's gonna be a one possession game going into 5 minutes into the fourth quarter. That's just what Kansas State does well. They muck it up against the good teams. Texas Tech bounced back. They destroyed Tarleton State. And Tarleton State's not a bad small D1 school. Oklahoma looked pretty good against Tulsa. I thought Tulsa was going to give them a good game. But Dylan Gabriel show at 421 yards, 5 touchdowns, went 28 of 31. With one of those counting, an interception counts as an incompletion, or it does in the NFL. I don't know if it does in college. But you still got to say through 4 incompletions total, 1 being an interception and 3 on the thing. Let's see. BYU beat Arkansas. That's an interesting one. Arkansas is kind of in that Florida level where you feel like they can play with anybody, but they can also lose to anybody solid. And I think you saw that happen in this game with BYU. And I'll tell you what, as a Texas fan, and we can all jokes aside because they beat BYU beat Texas a few years ago back to back. But BYU,
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill's on 47 different knee braces, running for 200 yards back to back years. But that is the team coming in that scares me as a Longhorn fan the most. Is BYU, because they have, first off, they're older because of their missionary trips. People don't understand that they take a year off, usually their sophomore year, and so, but their sophomore playing time, but they're a year older, and that matters. When you're talking the difference between an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old, there's a big difference. That's that last growth period. So, and a game like this just shows that as they bounced back. They were down 10 to Arkansas. And they scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, telling you what, man, BYU scary. And for Arkansas, it just shows that there's still a little bit of ways for them to go to be consistently a great team.
They have a long-term plan at Arkansas with head coach Sam Pittman. I think he'll probably be there another 5 years. He's probably going to just try to groom his replacement while there. But the university loves him. I really like KJ Jefferson, their quarterback. I think he'll translate these skills he's developing in college into the pro level.
I can see that.
But yeah, they're a few years away, but Arkansas is on the right path, and they played a pretty good BYU team. So
yeah. Ohio beat Iowa State. Look, Iowa State, the whole Hunter Deckers thing with the gambling, and I keep hearing that there could be more that's going to come from that. Iowa State's you got to wonder if Matt Campbell's job's in jeopardy, whether it's fair or not. When your starting quarterback gets busted for stuff like that, you're usually going to be held accountable as the head coach. Let's see. I'm just trying to get in. All right, Texas, Wyoming. All right, so this is one of those games as a Texas fan. Like, I never was worried about the game.
Yeah.
Like, they were sluggish. If you didn't think they were going to start sluggish, well, then that's what happens after you beat a top 5 team like you do, and you're the darlings of the nation. You either come out the next game and you go 70-0 and you don't look back, or you struggle. And Wyoming's a good team. Wyoming is not this isn't a 2-11 team that Texas played. Wyoming beat Texas Tech. Come back from behind got the 2-point conversion to win. But you could just, as soon as Wyoming had that 62-yard touchdown to begin things, I was like, yeah, it's going to be one of those games. But I never felt that, and this is the difference in Texas with that defense. I never felt that Wyoming could put together a long drive when they needed to make it a game, and they couldn't. Whenever they would start to move the ball, Texas would come up with a big defensive thing. Offensively, Texas looked kind of crappy for about 2.5 quarters. And then about midway through the third quarter, they figured it out. But, I mean, that's just – for now, Texas, just win your games. You've beat a top 5 team. all you need to do is win out. You don't even have to win out pretty, and you're going to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just defense and running game in this for Texas. That's how they basically won. Jonathan Brooks was a kind of the star on offense.
From Hallettsville, another 3A school. So we've talked 2 D1 teams that have 3 running backs that are in 4A, 3A, or 2A. That shows you where Texas football is right now.
Yeah, pretty big. On Jaron Thompson, defensive back for UT, got the pick 6 at the end of the game, kind of sealed the deal. I agree with you. Wyoming's a halfway decent team. We already talked about their upset at Texas Tech a couple of weeks ago. So this is a game team. So, I mean, at the end of the season, we might look back at this game and think better of it. But, I mean, it was a pretty slow start for Texas. It was 10-10 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah. But again, I legitimately, I was not in any way worried. I did not think, I didn't have the oh no, here we go type movements. I was like, okay, this is kind of how I felt it would go. Other Texas games, UTEP got beat by Arizona. Texas State beat Jackson State 77-34. I think they scored, it was 30 points in 5 minutes of game time or something like that. It was some crazy number. I saw it pop up on my score line Saturday night. North Texas beat Louisiana Tech in a really good game. A&M, A&M, it's UL Monroe. They're not a great team, but for a program that kind of has been in a little bit of a turmoil the last 2 weeks after their loss, I think this was a really good win for them. A really good win. UTSA got upset mildly by Army. UTSA's quarterback Frank Harris Jr. what didn't play, and that you could tell the difference. And then SMU practicing their new AAC things. They roll Prairie View A&M 69-0. I remember when Prairie View A&M was so bad. Like they had a 66 game losing streak, and they were the joke of everything. And they literally were wearing not the same colors because I think they're purple and black, but they literally look like Waterboy's team before the bowl when they had the mismatch, the really ugly, and then somebody infused some money into the program. They got the nice looking uniforms, and then since then they've been a pretty decently competitive team, but they definitely weren't in that game. Other Big 12s, Cincinnati got beaten overtime by Miami of Ohio.
Ben Roethlisberger's team.
Yeah. The Rapers, this was they broke a 16-game losing.
I think they're called the Red Hawks.
Oh, Red Hawks. My bad. Sorry about that. They finally beat Cincinnati. It was so funny. That was one of those that Cincinnati was supposedly talking about. Maybe they're going to just drop that game forever. You know, they weren't getting anything from it. And good win for them, for Miami of Ohio. For Cincy, you're going to have a couple of those games like this. They're good. They're not great. They're still a team that when it's time for Texas to play them this year, and a lot of the ones on the outside coming in, it's just the newness of it. It's a little scary, you know. But Brett Gabbert is the quarterback for Miami, Ohio. That's Blaine Gabbert's brother. I don't know why that's just interesting to me. Check down Gabbert too, I guess maybe. That's what I was like.
Miami, Ohio, they had this guy named Yasin McKee.
Yeah.
He had a blocked game-winning kick attempt by Cincinnati because Cincinnati almost won this in regulation, but then he blocked the kick attempt that forced the overtime and then intercepted Emory Jones, Cincinnati's quarterback, on a 4th down pass at the 2-yard line to seal the win in overtime. So pretty solid overall game.
Doesn't it feel like in the pros and college we're seeing a lot of blocked field goals early?
Yeah.
We had a couple last night. We had Miami blocked one last night against Cincinnati. Or Cincinnati blocked one? I can't remember who blocked it. Speaking of, we'll talk about it. I haven't even looked at the notes, but you do have New England on the pretty uniform game list, right?
I decided to go based off of game this week. But yes, I agree. New England with the old school look at night in Foxborough was a beautiful look.
Cannot believe Miami didn't wear their old ones in the round. Anyway.
And if they did, that would have been a 10.
Oh yeah, it would have been. But let's wrap up the college with games for this week, I should say. Big 12 action starts to swing in. You got Texas versus Baylor in Waco. Just an interesting game because Texas has struggled against Baylor in the last 10 years. Texas Tech at West Virginia. It's always tough to go into West Virginia. I think that's that 11 a.m. game. That's going to be a while. That's going to be a high scoring. It's literally going to be what you think Texas Tech and West Virginia should be, 50-49 type game. You got the Skillet Bowl, SMU versus TCU. I like SMU in that game. I like it.
Really?
Yeah, again, I'm not high on TCU this year. I think TCU is going to have 4 or 5 losses. I was actually kind of impressed that not that they beat Houston, but that they beat them by almost 22 points or whatever that is. Let's see, big game. This is a big game Saturday. Like if we ever get enough advertising to where we can have preview shows with our stuff, the preview show for this week would be absolutely crazy because you've got Ohio State at Notre Dame, 6 versus 9. 19 Colorado at 10 Oregon, 16 Ole Miss at 13 Alabama, 22 UCLA at 11 Utah, number 4 Florida State at previously ranked Clemson. That's now not, but they're still Clemson. 16 Oklahoma going to Cincinnati. What's that going to be like for Oklahoma? First Big 12 and only Big 12 game against Cincinnati on the road. 14 Oregon State at 21 Washington State, and then 24 Iowa at 7 Penn State. That's a whole deck of games right there. And it's not only that, but you're going to have conferences getting already decided. Like if Iowa pulls off the upset against Penn State's basically eliminated because I don't see them beating both Ohio State and Michigan. These are some of those games where you think, oh, the season, it's just September, but man, it already matters. And for Texas, every conference game matters, not for the Big 12. But to be a team that's in playoff contention and be one of the teams trying to get to the 4. So I think this is going to be a crazy, crazy week. Give me some of your upsets you think are going to happen in this one.
I think Clemson beats Florida State. I saw how Florida State played against Boston College, and they struggled a lot. They had a big lead, and then Boston College came back. It was only 2. I think Florida State won 31-29. So, yeah, right there. And I think Clemson might be starting to figure things out. After that week 1 loss, you kind of at Duke, you kind of felt that Clemson was finally starting to have that decline, that Dabo dynasty was over. But they've kind of responded well, and I'm kind of curious to see how this could be a big statement win for Clemson this season.
See, I think Florida wins by like 3 touchdowns. I don't have any trust in Clemson. Dabo hires Riley, the offensive coordinator, away from TCU, and TCU had a great offense last year, and he immediately says he's running my offense. So that tells me Dabo hasn't learned anything. Also, I just think Clemson's their recruiting just hasn't been quite as well. But this would be a game for Florida State, one of the more inconsistent teams over the last 10 years. But I still think they win. My upsets, I have Notre Dame beating Ohio State. I have Ole Miss beating Alabama. I have UCLA beating Utah. And then I have Cincinnati beating Oklahoma. And then the other ones, I like Colorado. I think Oregon probably wins comfortably against Colorado. I could see that one being close early, high scoring early, but then Oregon's defense in the second half making the stops and end up winning like 42-24 when it's 24-21 at half or something like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see Notre Dame winning. Sam Hartman's been lights out this season at quarterback.
Ohio State just doesn't look – I mean, they're still fine. Ohio State's still a top 10 program, but they don't look like – barring anything weird happening, I think Michigan might end up running away with that conference.
Yeah, and like you saw what Alabama's quarterback play was with Tyler Buckner, the Notre Dame transfer. Yeah. You can see what a difference makes for Notre Dame when you actually have a really good quarterback there. I mean, I know he's 25 years old, but Sam Hartman could probably still be in the NFL and be, a pretty good quarterback for some team. I mean, right now he's just behind a really good offense, a really good defense, well coached. So yeah, I could definitely see Notre Dame winning. If Cam Rising, Utah's quarterback, returns healthy, I think they can actually beat. I think they can actually win this weekend against UCLA.
I'm just real big on UCLA. I think UCLA USC this year has a ton of meaning.
It It's gonna be one of the prettier games
Oh,
too.
it always is, man. The red and the blue together. That's what I. It's so funny you bring that up. I was randomly on YouTube and it got to the Miles Austin game. I don't even. I don't even have to say anything past that. You know exactly what game I'm talking about.
Yep. 09 against Kansas
And I
City.
always forget it was the Blues and the Reds on the field.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know why more teams don't do that. Like if your colors do not now, don't do it. You remember a couple years ago, Dallas and San Diego, and they both wore their blues, and it looked atrocious. San Diego had their their baby blues, and then Dallas had their road blues, and that was the weirdest looking game. Like, yeah, that's not when you should do it. It should be completely contrasting colors. Like let's say the Colts and if the Patriots are wearing the red and the Colts are wearing their blue, that's a great on the field game. That would look great. Anyway, so that is our college section. We'll put those notes away. Now, children, please take out your NFL notes as we're now going to talk NFL. Off the top of your head, well, let me go mine. Off the top of my head, back-to-back weeks. And no, I'm not like, oh, the NFL's over. Back-to-back weeks, though, where the noon red zone games were just they were good. You know, Tennessee Chargers ended up being really, really close. Of course, Detroit, Seattle went into overtime, but Atlanta, Green Bay, you know, as far as the scores, but the football's still just kind of ugly right now, and that's fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It'll get prettier, but it's still kind of ugly because those scores are close. But like the Baltimore Cincinnati, that was never really in doubt. Like Cincinnati got a touchdown pretty late to kind of make it look up better. Atlanta, Green Bay was field goals. Dallas was field goals. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But before we do all that, let's go best uniform games. Green Bay and Atlanta. You were okay. So we always got to be truthful with our audience. We hung out yesterday and we both outdrank the coverage pretty quick. And that's probably why the noon games weren't that exciting to me because I was trying to not to nap. I was winning that battle a little bit. I was falling off. You were not winning that battle. You were napping hard and heavy. But every time you commented, it was that Green Bay Atlanta is the prettiest game of the year so far. Atlanta wore their black jerseys with their old 70s, 80s red helmet. That's a look that actually, so technically that's a look from like their 68, 69 years. But if you ever actually go back and look at those, the color that they use for the black almost looks brown. It almost comes off as brown, but that's what they're harking back to yesterday. And I'll say it again, that is the prettiest look for Atlanta. The red,
yeah, they need to just wear that every week.
Even if you want to update the Falcon to look like the new Falcon, which is I'm fine with because I think they're new or new jerseys are still good. Falcons are kind of like the Chargers. You shouldn't really be able to fuck up black and red. That's a real easy combo, especially the shades that they use, and they've always done a good job at that. San Francisco at the Rams. I gotta disagree with you on that. I told you last week. I'm out on the Rams look. I don't like it at all. Like it might be now the ugliest look to me. It already looks outdated. The way they do the number gradient and the blue, the color of blue that they use, and the way they use the blue. I just think that their look's just outdated for me. San Francisco looked great as always.
Well, yeah, right colors, different design would be better. Like their old design, not the white and blue of the 60s and 50s, but more of the yellow and blue of the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, brighten it up a little bit. That's to me, that's where the Chargers made their mistake going from the 70s, 80s into like the team that went to the Super Bowl. I didn't like that Charger look because they had taken a lot of the yellow gold out and it was just that dark blue and it was just boring. And that's kind of to me where the Rams are on that. Indianapolis, Houston. I guess I'm more excited now for the new Houston look than Houston now. But the Colts, I still think are very underrated as far as how they look. And then Baltimore and Cincinnati, interesting one. I like that.
Yeah, noon game. Those two teams with the color contrast, I kind of like the look. But yeah, I mean, going back to the Rams, I agree with you. I just really like San Francisco playing there. It just looks good.
No, I don't disagree. I do miss them playing in Anaheim though, when it would be them two, and you'd have the baseball field in the middle, and
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Jim Everett crying on the second, what would be the second base when he's butt up because he's got his 7th sack of the game. But anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and get into the games. We'll, as always, we'll save the Dallas game for the second or the last part of the show. Where do you want to start?
I mean, we could start with that Hail Mary game, Washington and Denver.
Oh my
if you
God!
want.
So that's one of those. So we had to leave your house around like at halftime of the Cowboy game. So we bolted home, which is perfect. By the time walk out to your door, and by the time we're walking in my door, it's literally halftime is about to end. It's just about over.
Yeah.
But this time we were stopping to get some soup. My fiance's mom makes me soup. I love soup. She makes me soup because I work so hard. I'm a strong, growing boy, and so that got me just paying attention to the Cowboy game. And I was seeing the Washington game was like it was the late one. Like it even somehow got behind Dallas. Like when Dallas ended, Washington had like 8 minutes left. And I just thought, okay, Washington completed the comeback. I turned it off and just kind of went about the rest of my night. I didn't even see the Hail Mary till this morning. But to not only get the Hail Mary, but then miss the 2-point conversion, that reminds me of when the Saints did the miracle play down the field just to lose off because they missed the extra point. And that was back when extra points were easy. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. You got to wonder, man, how did Denver sell their soul for Peyton Manning and those 2 Super Bowl chances, winning one, losing one, because everything's supposed to be right for them now. They seem to have a really good roster, yet here they are 0-2.
And their defense has been the biggest disappointment, especially in this game. Sam Howell was basically untouched this entire game. And I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know if Randy Gregory's performing well. That no-fly zone secondary 2.0.
Well, now, to be fair, this game, their defense, last game, it was all their offense. Their defense gave up 17. And at one point in this game, they were up comfortably like 18 points. So, I mean, it wasn't like Washington ended up with 35, but it wasn't like Washington jumped out with 28 points in the first quarter. They had 14 points at halftime. And then they got, stupid mute.
Yeah, Denver was up 21-3, and then Washington ended up leading 35-24. So it was kind of Washington made a comeback, and then Denver made the comeback. But yeah, I can remember seeing a game like this. I believe it was 94. The Jets were playing the Bills, I believe, and Bills were up 28-20. And I think Esiason, I think it was his last year in Buffalo or with the Jets. He threw a Hail Mary pass. It was caught. And then they missed a 2-point conversion. So it was kind of a big letdown. Just,
oh, yeah.
You got this momentum. All you got to do is get 2 yards, and you can't.
Go watch That's Good Sports on YouTube. He's a big Bronco fan, and he does you can watch the game with him and watch his reaction. He put it on his shorts on YouTube. Freaking hilarious.
Yeah, I really like that show. It's pretty good.
He was funny because he was like, "This is worse. I just lose the game," and I literally wanted to be like, "And now you know what a Cowboy fan feels like," because how many times have we? And I guess again, every team, but when it's your team, it just feels like it's that much more weird. Atlanta 2-0. They beat Green Bay 25-24. They were down 12 points. I know they're doing what their offense wants to do. And Desmond Ridder has not been terrible, but I don't know, man. I feel like Atlanta and Tampa Bay are going to be those 2 teams that everybody's like, oh my God, they're 2-0, they're 4-2, whatever. And then by the end of the season, they're 7-10 or 8-9, 9-8. I get what Atlanta's wanting to do, but you're going to have to get a valid passing game at some point.
Yeah, it's just not good right now, and I don't know if it's because of Ridder or just him learning. Because there is talent all around. I mean, Bijan had 4 catches. Drake London's there. Kyle Pitts there. They have talent on that roster. It's just a matter of executing. They just really are relying on the run right now, and it's working. I mean, they had 2 straight home games, so that kind of helps. Now, next week, they're going to go play Detroit on the road, so that might – it's still a domed game, so that might still – I mean, like, I'm looking at their stats. They ran it 45 times for 211 yards. Pretty good. I mean, it's almost 5 yards a carry. And then Ridder had 237 yards and a touchdown. So Wasn't like he played bad.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just not. I don't get, and I've told you this before. I don't get drafting these guys like a Desmond Ritter who played a certain way in college.
Yeah.
Drafting him in the third round. So you're saying, hey, this is a guy we want to groom, and then trying to make them like bus driver quarterbacks. I don't get that. I don't get why are you draft a bus driver quarterback and just make him a bus driver quarterback. Don't draft a guy that at Cincinnati was a playmaker and then put him in a system where everything's checked down and be safe. I've never, and Atlanta's not the first team to do this. This is all, every team's probably done this at some point, but it's just like you draft these athletic quarterbacks who do certain things and then you put them in the pros and you go, well, you can't do those certain things because you're in the pros. Okay, then why the hell did you draft them? Like that's pointless to me. But you talk about Detroit, they lost yesterday now that was a good game. Yeah. 37-31. Geno looked more like Geno Smith of last year. And I think the biggest thing is Geno, every quarterback, but Geno especially, he's a lot like Dak in this way. When Dak comes out early and is hitting 4 and 5 and 6 receivers on your first couple drives, usually that means Dallas is going to have a really, really good game offensively. Yesterday, Geno comes out, he hits 9 different receivers, throws for 328 yards, has 2 touchdown passes, both to Lockett. That's the team, or that's the guy that Seattle signed to the 4-year deal, is the guy you saw yesterday, not the guy you saw last Sunday.
Yeah. Game-winning touchdown in overtime. Great effort by him. DK had 75 yards on 6 catches. Both teams tried to run the ball, wasn't too effective. Neither of them averaged over 4 yards a carry. Goff had a good game, but he had a costly interception. I think that was his first interception in
400 attempts.
Yeah, so which is ridiculous. I mean, he's been playing very efficient, and it's kind of coinciding with Detroit having this consistent run from the end of last half of 2022 to the first 2 games of this year, just consistently winning. They're always in the game because he's not turning the ball over.
Now,
go ahead.
I was going to say, to be fair, Lions were running and David Montgomery got hurt.
Yes.
And we don't know what the status on that. It looked like it was his knee. I haven't heard anything this morning, but yeah, so there is that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's his thigh. And they're saying, in fact, this just literally came out. Montgomery, it's his thigh, and it said it will take him a couple of weeks to get fully healthy, but he's going to try to keep playing through it. So I would have liked to see where they were going with that, because he had 16 carries, 67 yards, a touchdown. But yeah, both teams were after that were living and dying through the air. What was it, combined almost 700 yards. This is the type of game that you expect from these teams. It's really fun. And this is why these 2 teams are 2 of the teams that I like to notice on Red Zone.
And I think they played a similar game last year too, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they did. In fact, that might have been one of the ones where the Lions kind of started getting their roll going. Let's see. Let's go down. Hey, we said it last week. The Rams are not a bad team. And I know they lost, but they lost 30-23. Now they kicked a field goal as the game time expired, so they really lost 30-30. But I mean, they looked really, really good. They were tied at halftime, 17-17. Good call by Shanahan with 3 seconds left before the end of the half. Ball at the 1. He could have gone for the field goal. He went for the touchdown. They got it. But I'm telling y'all, folks, the Rams look like the Rams. They look competitive. They're not going to be an easy out for any team this year.
Last year there was an issue with the Rams. They had no really good receiving attacks, and now this year they got Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua is a rookie, and he set a reception record for a rookie. He caught 15 passes.
Does his start the last 2 games, does that take anything away from Cooper Kupp? Or do you feel like, oh, maybe it's the system? Not that Cooper Kupp's not a great receiver, but you know what I'm talking about. Is it more the system, though? Because, I mean, this guy stepped in, and he's on pace for like 145 catches.
I think it's talent, because they struggled last year without Cooper Kupp. They didn't have anybody. They
But they
consider
also didn't have Matthew Stafford either, though. So I mean, that's
well, even with Stafford, those first few games of the year, they struggled. I remember that game where they played the Cowboys.
yeah. But I mean, I'm thinking we're learning that his arm, his arm last year coming out of camp was bothering him.
Yeah,
So I don't disagree with you, but I'm just saying we don't really know about last year. And I told you this. I think the coaching staff for the Rams are having a blast. They just look like they're having fun because they're kind of back to being the underdog. I mean, heck, a lot of people assume they're in a full, rebuild mode, and I'm watching them now 2 weeks in a row, and I'm thinking that's not a team that looks like that they think they're in a rebuild mode.
and it's just so weird looking at their roster. Like, look at their defense. The only two players I know are John Johnson III and Aaron Donald, and that's
Yeah.
it. Every
Yeah.
one of those guys are just new, and then they're doing a pretty halfway decent job. I mean, they did a really good job against the Seahawks, shutting them down in the second half last week, and they kind of sort of did okay against the 49ers. They couldn't stop the run, but I mean, it's kind of hard to stop Christian McCaffrey and Debo Samuel just running at
Yeah.
you
Well,
over again. So.
and then you've got Ayuk and you've got, Kittle. I mean, San Francisco, it's funny. San Francisco is going to be in a top 5 offense. They're going to be in a top 5 scoring, but you're going to still feel like they don't quite get a lot out of every guy because they are happy to go with the hot hand. And so you're going to have games where it's McCaffrey and Samuel. Last week it was Ayuk who had 11 catches and 2 touchdowns. Hey, the Tennessee Chargers beat the LA Titans. And no, I'm not joking on the name because it's 2 teams right there. First off, it was a fun game. Tennessee beats the Chargers 27-24. Tennessee's 1-1, no shock. Chargers are 0-2, no shock. I'm beginning to wonder if we joke about it, but whenever something happens with Dallas, everybody goes, "Oh, Jerry Jones's influence." I'm beginning to wonder if the Spanos' influence on the Chargers, because whoever their head coach is for the last 15 years just is incredibly stupid. Like the Chargers, and I'm not even talking about necessarily in this game. I don't really remember if there was any big, oh my God, but just consistently, the Chargers always feel like they're getting out coached.
Yeah, I mean, I think I put a stat on the run sheet about Brandon Staley. He basically, this is the 5th time he's lost when leading by 10 or more points. This is kind of a make or break year for Staley. He has an offensive coordinator. They're looking okay so far on offense. They invested again for a second year in a row to stop the run. It looks like they did okay in the first game against Miami, but this week they're playing Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, and that didn't really. They got a combined 141 yards rushing, so that really didn't work out for them. Meanwhile, one more thing, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kellen Moore, he was trying to run the ball a lot last week, and that helped. But this week, barely got 20 rushing attempts for 61 yards. It just was not there. It was just he just kept going to Herbert in a close game when they could have probably done better with more balance.
As we tried to tell people, that Kellen Moore, some people took it that Mike McCarthy was being a dick. Others thought he was kind of tongue in cheek, a joke with Kellen when he made the comment about Kellen wants to score. I want to win. I think it was more of a joke, but I think there is truth to that. That's one of the things that Kellen Moore, as a Cowboy fan, was so frustrating is there'll just be these moments inside of a game. I mean, where you're up 14-10. Now, and to be fair, Austin Eckler was out, and that was a surprise out. It wasn't one of those that you knew all week. Believe me, I know it's fantasy. That just sucks. And so there could be some of that. But yeah, you lose by 3. If you told me, okay, the Chargers lost by 3, there was a comeback, but the Chargers lost by 3, I'd be like, oh, the Chargers came and back and fell short because they threw 41 freaking times. The Titans were down by 10 and threw 24 times because they're going to still run the ball. And the Chargers did a good job on Derrick Henry. He had 80 yards on 25 carries, but they just kept running the ball. And that's what Kellen Moore, man. You just have to get used to that. He does not do that, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of you as a Charger fan if you're not. And us Cowboy fans, we've been trying to tell you all along. The stats look pretty, man. Herbert threw for 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Keenan Allen.
You know what?
What?
The most Kellen Moore thing happened in overtime, though. The Chargers won the coin toss, and Herbert immediately threw 3 straight incompletions.
Yep.
It was the third man out of the whole game for the Titans.
I think I'm more inclined if I'm an NFL team to kick on overtime now with the way the rule is.
Yeah.
I don't get teams that take the ball in overtime anymore because the way it is now, you kick a field goal, they get the ball, or you punt, they get the ball. So if you take the ball and don't get a first down, you're automatically putting them in possession where they're only going to probably need 30 yards to get a field goal because all they need is a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think I legitimately believe that the rule should change. First of all, I think you need to the rule change that I want, you'd have to go back to a full quarter. You'd have to stop being 10 minutes because I believe that if there's not a touchdown in the first 2 drives, but they're 2 field goals, I think we should at least go to a corresponding third drive. But yeah, I don't know why teams take the ball in overtime anymore. I would definitely punt or kick off every time because your odds are you're going to get the ball back and you're going to be in field goal position. But anyway, so the most 1-1 team, the Titans, and the most 0-2 team, the Chargers. And then it would no way and shock me if in 4 weeks from now, both of these teams are 4-2. The Chargers are a good, talented team.
Yeah.
They just got to, whatever it is, whatever that albatross is on them to where when they get up, if they can ever figure that out, and everybody thought they did last year when they made the playoffs, and then they had the most Charger playoff game that a Charger team could have. I mean, that's why when everybody talks about the Cowboys and their weird losses, I'm like, y'all need to look at what the Chargers, man, they no loss for them ever just go. You never feel like, oh, okay, that was just a good loss. That was, a good game. They just lost. It always feels like there's just something really, really weird. Speaking of good, look at the Giants, man.
I was just about to bring that up because you had mentioned you and I. Well, I had said that the Rams and Cardinals are probably the worst teams this year.
Yeah.
2 weeks, I've been proven way wrong. I even wanted to get New York Giant defense in a lot of my fantasy leagues.
I did. That's what I did, and I failed miserably. I will lose 2 games this week specifically because the defense didn't point out. And one of the leagues, it's very conservative scoring. I think they're actually 0.
Yeah, it's been 0. I think in almost every league. I'm in a dynasty league too, and I think they had 0 points.
Yeah, but in the second half, the Giants' offense wakes up as they have. This blows my mind right here. So they came back from 21 points. That is the largest. That ties their team history with the largest comeback win, and that was back in 1949 to the Chicago Cardinals. 21 points is not, especially in today's era. Yeah. 21 points is not oh my God. You would have just thought those Phil Simms teams, the Eli Manning teams, you'd have just thought one of those would have, been down 24-0 and come back. But a little bad is that Saquon Barkley got hurt. Supposedly, they think it's just a regular sprain instead of a high ankle sprain, which is the difference in maybe missing a week or 2 and could be missing 9 or 10 weeks. If he's out 9 or 10 weeks, the Giants are done. Look, all the talk, this was fun, great comeback, but you were freaking down 21 points to Joshua Dobbs and a Cardinals team that is literally, well, somebody needs to tell James Conner they're tanking. Watch, he's going to all of a sudden have a mysterious injury here in a couple of weeks because he's almost too good for the Cardinals because they don't want to win. The Cardinals do not want to win. They want Caleb Williams.
But
they're 0-2, so still,
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood Brown had a good game. Like you said, Connor had a good game. So I don't know, man. I don't really know. Like they have to try to win when they're on the field, but definitely the personnel moves they've made suggest that they don't want to win. And
okay, so we'll go back to the Cowboy game. But are you, as a Cowboy fan, worried about the Cardinals next week?
No, not in the slightest.
Okay, me neither. And usually I am because the Cardinals is one of those that historically give Dallas a hard time. Even if you go look at the record, Dallas has won, 3 out of 4, but over the last 15 years, it hasn't been that way. That canceled 99 season, of course, happened where the Cardinals cheated against the Cowboys in Texas Stadium and blitzed. The Cowboys didn't know they were allowed to do that. How That should have. I still remember that. I was just thinking about this morning walking. I can't remember who what was that was doing the commentating for the game, but I still remember him saying if the Cowboys are not going to pick up the blitz any better than they did that first drive, this is going to be a long day for the Cowboy offense. And they never did pick up the blitz. And Clay Shiver, center, is still having PTSD about the Cardinals blitzes coming in. But yeah, they usually give the Cowboys a hard time. But I Dallas just it feels different the last couple of years when they play bad teams.
Yeah,
Like,
I remember we used to complain back in the day that every game was close.
Yeah.
Well, now they play these teams, especially like in 21. They'll blow them out.
Well, last year too. Look what they did to Minnesota and Indianapolis. I mean, and look what they've done the first 2 weeks of the year. And I know people. Well, what about Houston? I'm not saying they blow out every bad team, but it just feels like when everybody's like, "Oh, this is a trap game for Dallas," they tend to respond well. All right, let's go ahead and get into that.
Last year, Houston went through a stretch toward the end of the season. I think 4 out of 5 games where they were playing some really good teams close.
And Cardinals, I think, are doing the exact same thing this year. It's just the first couple of games, even bad teams have those. I mean, unless you're like, even historically bad teams, the 89 Cowboys beat the Washington Redskins. So, you're going to have those games like that. But let's go ahead and go into yesterday's game. Dallas beats the Jets 30-10. The defense for Dallas, once again, just absolutely dominating, holding the Jets to 215 yards. 76 of that was Grant Wilson, touchdown pass. That just perfect. Hey, Zach Wilson made a great throw, and it was perfectly right across, or Garrett Wilson perfectly to him. He broke away. It was just one of those plays that happens in the NFL. The Jets had 12 first downs. They gave up 3 sacks, but that doesn't even tell the story of the pass pressure. 5 penalties, 4 turnovers. This was maybe Micah Parsons' best game as a pro.
He was in that backfield. He had a couple of sacks, hit Wilson 4 times, defended a pass.
Had a fumble.
Yeah,
fumble recovery.
Yeah, he forced a fumble on Dalvin Cook that you mentioned earlier on the show. It was just all around dominating effort. The defense is showing up, and they're playing well. They had one mistake, which was that long touchdown, but outside of that, I mean, Garrett Wilson, he only had one other catch after that. So that just goes to show you like how dominating this defense. I mean, having said all that, the defense has played Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson. Next week they're playing Dobbs, so it's not like they're playing elite quarterbacks.
Well, I mean, no, I'm not joking, but I mean, last year Daniel Jones was the least turnover quarterback in the league, and look what they did to him last week.
Yeah,
just to say, offensively, this is what Mike McCarthy was talking about. This is the type of game where I think sometimes with Kellen Moore, he's trying to go down the field, even though Brandon Cook was hurt. This was the game where you see where Mike McCarthy, it's check down Dak, and that's not a bad thing. There's certain games you don't need to throw the ball down the field. And I saw people like, well, yeah, but there's no but. The Jets have a top 5 defense. The Jets maybe have the second or third best secondary in the league. And CD Lamb just announced, in my opinion, that he's a top 5 wide receiver right now, because he took on the Jets defense that basically just drove the Bills crazy last week. And Lamb had 100 yards at halftime, ended up with 11 catches, 148 yards, and just maybe his best performance as a pro.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic effort. I mean, last week, like you mentioned, Jordan Whitehead, I think he had the 3 interceptions. And, of course, they have the all-everything player, Sauce Gardner at
DJ
corner.
Reed, who on any other team would be a number 1 corner.
Yeah, Adrian Amos, a really solid veteran. It's a really good team top to – I mean, they have one of the top 2 defensive lines in football too.
This is the top 5 defense. They don't have a weakness on defense. And Dallas yesterday, with Tyler Smith out, with Tyron battling whatever 1,000th injury he has, the guard, I can't think of his name, he went out in the middle of the game, and TJ Bass came on, and they gave up 1 sack. And the rushing wasn't great, but Dallas held the ball 42 minutes. I mean, Dallas wore down a Jet defense that made a Buffalo offense that yesterday bounced back and scored 31 points, made them look foolish last week.
Oh yeah, Buffalo. I think they beat the Raiders 38-10. If I'm not
38.
mistaken.
So look at what the Jets did to on a night when they lost Aaron Rodgers, when it would have been everybody would have totally understood if last week that whole team would have folded in that game. And by the way, I still outside of Zach Wilson, that is the Jets are still a team I think is going to make noise in the AFC. I do think they're going to have to trade for a quarterback or get somebody, and I don't mean Brady, get somebody to come out of retirement. Matt Ryan, dude. Matt
Yeah,
Ryan with that team and that defense. I think people think of Matt Ryan from the Colts, but if you go back and just really pay attention to the Colts for the last 3 years, there was just a lot of just things just weren't right. And I think Matt Ryan with that offense, but yeah, the Jet, this is not a bad Jets team at all.
but this Jets team could still make the playoffs as long as they just hand the ball off to Brees Hall. Because
And
last year they were 5-2 doing that same formula. Zach Wilson would get 100 yards, a touchdown, 200 picks, but they would still win because Brees Hall would break it off for a 75-yard touchdown. So as long as he stays healthy, as long as Dalvin Cook's a solid number 2 behind him, I think the Jets will still make the playoffs.
speaking of though, what a way to start that game. The Jets run a stretch play to Brees Hall, and DeMarcus Lawrence breaks in from the backside, tackles him 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That's why I mean the synergy that this defense has is just it's absolutely amazing because we all don't talk about Micah, and again I think Micah had his best performance as a pro just because everything he did it literally impacted the game. He didn't get any trash sacks. He didn't. I mean it was everything was while the game mattered, and at times he was making a Jet offensive line just look really, really bad and really foolish. But DeMarcus Lawrence had a big start to that. And I just again I say it, this is a professional win. These are the type of wins you do against teams like this when you are supposed to be a team that's going to win 10 to 12 to 13 games. And they're 2-0 for the first time since 2019. We don't want to talk about that because they eventually went 3-0 and then I think lost 3 in a row. That was just a
Yeah.
weird. That was just a
Oh,
weird.
yeah, they lost to Sam Bradford in his mono.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh yeah,
that?
that's right. And they lost to the Saints like 11-9 or 13-12 or some weird, just a ugly.
That was I think a Monday night, or it might have been a Monday or Sunday night game. But the news going into there was Drew Brees wasn't going to play. It was
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater, and I was thinking, okay, I thought I had penciled this as a loss. Now that Brees is not there, it's an easy win. I'm
Yeah.
sure that was kind of the trend of the 2019 Cowboys, where they would have these monster games, and then just I think you had brought up with the Eagle game that year toward the end of the year where they lost the division. They would just not show up at all.
Oh,
And they
and
kind of
the game plan was terrible. Everything.
yeah. That was
But
Jason Garrett's last year.
yep. But anyways, so Cowboys go to 2-0. I know people will say, and you're gonna pick any game. I know people say, well, they're red zone offense. Yeah, but again, who they were playing. And I also think that Dallas pretty much realized early on that as long as they didn't F it up, they were going to be fine. And that goes back to the Kellen Moore thing. You want to give. We want to give Dak Prescott a hard time, but I go back to that Washington game 2 years ago, where in Washington, Dallas just start like they did last week. You know, they're just dominating Washington thoroughly. And then they're still trying to throw the ball, and there's a couple turnovers, and then all of a sudden it looked like Washington was about to get a win, and Dallas kind of got lucky. But that's the difference without Kellen Moore. And I think Kellen Moore is a great offensive coach, and I think he will do great things with the Chargers. I legitimately think he's the next head coach of the Chargers. But you look at this offense now and you go, okay, I don't know if Kellen Moore would have had the patience last year in the second half because this was an ugly, ugly game offensively as far as drives, multiple points. The running game only had like 70 yards on 30 carries, but they were wearing down a really, really good defense. And McCarthy had the patience to keep just throwing checkdowns. Deuce Vaughn had a couple of really key plays, just simple check down screens and stuff. And that's what Dallas has needed. You need to be able to be consistent play to play instead of, like you say, have a big half and then the next half you can't do anything.
Yeah, and I think that might be the difference going forward. We might be able to close out games easier this year than we did in prior years. The left guard you mentioned earlier is Chuma Edoga.
Yes.
He hurt his hamstring.
Oh, I thought they said his arm. Was it his hamstring?
Oh, no, elbow issue. Sorry, Tyler Smith, who he replaced.
Yeah.
He left in the second half with the elbow issue.
Right. And Jerry Jones said after the game he should be okay. That was, like if he has to play next week, he should be perfectly fine. We'll finish up real quick. Other games from this week. Let's see. Philadelphia beat Minnesota. That was Philadelphia's 2-0. It's a very 2-0, but they're still 2-0. I think that's the thing people are forgetting and all that. Again, if you can win when you're mad, that's usually a good sign. And Philadelphia's going to be perfectly fine. I still think Minnesota's going to be fine. Minnesota, again, had that typical game where everybody's going to look at Kirk Cousins. And he was perfectly fine. And somebody's going to say, well, it was all late. No, it really wasn't. Minnesota was legitimately in that game. Yeah, Philadelphia got up 2 scores, but Minnesota kept responding. What Minnesota's got to figure out, and this is something that bothered them last year, is that first quarter. They start so bad. Again, we always compare to things we know. It reminds me a little bit of the 2020 Cowboys before Dak got hurt, and even after Dak got hurt, and they were still getting to be decent offensively, but they would start so bad offensively they kept putting themselves in a hole. And that's what Minnesota does right now. And then the rest of the game, Minnesota's perfect, but 4 fumbles and it was all with like 6 minutes of game time too. Minnesota feels like they could either teeter and end up with 5 wins or figure it out and go on an 8-game winning streak.
It's kind of what they did last year, winning all these close games, and now, including the playoff game, they've lost 3 in a row. That was 1 score.
Yeah.
And, this kind of reminds me of the 21 Vikings, where they were, even if whether it's a good or bad team, it's going to be a close loss. So they need to do something. It's a different head coach, same results as 21. So something has to change there.
Miami beats New England. This is why Miami can be scary. And we talked about, and Tua had a solid game, but you and I talked about there's no way New England was going to let Tua beat them, and so Mostert had 2 touchdowns, 121 yards. Kansas City beat Jacksonville in a very ugly, low-scoring game, but Kansas City wins 17-9. Tampa Bay beat Chicago in a very ugly game, but look, man, Baker Mayfield 317 yards and a touchdown. I was the one saying Tampa's going to be competitive in the South, but the 2-0 is not. Baker's going to do what Baker does, and there's going to be a game here shortly where he throws 5 interceptions.
Big Monday night game hosting the Eagles coming up.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's this week too, man. That's enough. Philadelphia's had an interesting start to their season with who they've had to play. Tonight's game, we always record this on Monday. New Orleans at Carolina, Cleveland at Pittsburgh. I never knew that everybody else apparently hated the split the Monday night doubleheader. I never understood why. I thought that was awesome. A game at 6 p.m. and then a game at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. They're doing it now where they're playing at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's like an hour apart, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't get that. Like, to me, that makes no sense. The other way, at least, you got 90% of the second game or first game over, and then the second game would be a West Coast game. It usually was an AFC West game. Yeah. I don't get them playing this within the same, but I think it's 2 good matchups, but I also think it could be 2 ugly games.
Oh, yeah. Look at the Panthers. They're starting a rookie quarterback. The Saints didn't really look that great against Tennessee, although they did come out with the win. And then the Browns, I still don't know how good Deshaun Watson is going to be this year.
He's been terrible.
Defense looked great. He looked terrible. So, it could be another Nick Chubb show. Steelers, second-year quarterback.
They look terrible.
Huh?
They looked terrible last week against
They looked terrible, so they're going to be wanting a bounce-back game at home, prime time against their biggest rival. It'd be interesting to see what happens. I agree with you. It could be 2 ugly games, but as long as the Cleveland one is ugly, but it's mainly Nick Chubb running all over the place, I'd be fine with that.
Oh, I think Cleveland's wearing the icy whites tonight.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't seen that, folks, look that up. Cleveland's going with icy whites for a couple games, all white look. That sharp, it looked good. Mm-hmm. It would be one of those, in my opinion. If I was them, I would just make that my road look, and then you can do all the other.
That might be the best uniform game this weekend.
Yeah, because Pittsburgh's always got a good look.
Nighttime in Pittsburgh, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, so real quick, games for next week. You talked about it. Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. I don't want to say I see Tampa Bay going 3-0, but for some reason I think this game is a mucked up, ugly Tampa. Again, we talked about this. Tampa Bay is not a bad team. Tampa Bay still has a solid, not as good defense as they did a couple years ago. Carlton David's been out. I don't know if he's supposed to play this week or not. But Tampa Bay still has a professional roster of guys that could win 9-10 games if the quarterback gets out of their way.
Especially on the defensive side, they have a really solid veteran unit there. And then also look at Philadelphia. It's not like they've been really impressive the first 2 weeks of the year. They're finding ways to win because they're a championship caliber team, and they're working in an offensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and a new defensive coordinator. So that's just going to add to them looking sort of jumbled throughout half the game at the very least.
The most NFL games of NFL this week: the Chargers versus the Vikings. It's the Spider-Man meme where they're just standing and pointing at each other. Because
what if it ends in a tie?
That's no. It'll end in a tie, but there'll be some obscure rule that we don't know about, and the Chargers will lose half a point and lose 30 to 29 and a half. I mean, yeah, you and I used to jokingly call Dallas the Chargers the Dallas of the AFC, but no, them in Minnesota. They're the teams that just absolutely mirror each other because they can beat anybody on any given week, but you're not going to be shocked if they get their doors beat by anybody on any given week. And I think this could legitimately be the best game of the week as far as action. I see this being just like the Chargers Dolphins game, 42-38, 35-34. Both teams are going to score at will on each other. Kellen Moore, the last couple of years, seems like he has Minnesota's number defensively. Like he's had really good game plans. And again, we will give Kellen Moore credit when he deserves it. And I just think he knows Minnesota's defense really well. Buffalo, Washington. We'll find out Washington in this game. This is a game where, okay, they beat the Cardinals, but they really, really ugly. Cardinals almost won that game, probably should have won that game. Then they go out and a miracle comeback against Denver. If Washington, I'm not saying Washington has to win this game, but if Washington's going to be a legit AFC or NFC East contender, I think this is a 24-21 type game. They lose, but if we think Washington's not going to be, Buffalo should win this by 3 touchdowns.
Hey, Eric Bieniemy had a good game too as offensive coordinator, so we'll see how him and Sam Howell progress in this game. It'll be a good test. It is at home against a really good defense, so I'm excited to watch. It'll be one of the games I'll definitely want to watch.
Oh yeah, and I think it's a 3:00 game too, or it might be a noon game. Dallas at Arizona. We talked about that. I think it's going to go a lot like this week. Arizona is not as talent devoid as people think they are. Defensively, they're not terrible. They're not great. Offensively, James Conner has started off as world beaters. Can he stay healthy? Dobbs has been exactly what you think a Dobbs is. He's going to look good at times. He's going to look bad at times. But I don't think Dallas is getting tested till next week. And I don't even know if is it next week. I can't remember if it's who they have next week. The Patriots. I can't remember. Anyway, I don't think Dallas gets really tested. I think they win 28-14, 28-10, kind of like they won this past week.
And this is the third straight year that they're being successful at turning the ball over. So I could see that being a 3 to 4 turnover show for Dobbs and company. And yeah, I mean, 2 to 3 score win for Dallas for sure. And you're right. After Arizona, Dallas does play the Patriots and then the 49ers and the Chargers.
I don't even know if the Patriots, I mean, they're always a test because of Belichick, but they don't. After watching them last night and then watching them against the Eagles, I'm not really impressed. Again, I've not been impressed with Mac Jones. I don't think he's the quarterback in the NFL, but it's the Patriots. They're always a little scary. Houston versus Jacksonville. I got Houston in an upset in this one.
Interesting. Okay.
I just think that Houston, first off, give Indianapolis credit. Again, I keep using this term, but they had a professional win over Houston. They just went in, they did what they needed to do. Anthony Richardson got hurt. Now it's back-to-back games he's got hurt. So that's one of those things like, okay, we need to – is that going to be an issue? But, Jacksonville lost. They looked really bad offensively after looking pretty solid against the Colts in week 1. They looked really bad at times offensively against a Kansas City Chiefs defense that's okay.
And they got Chris Jones back, though.
Yeah, and they got Chris Jones back, and he looked good. He had a couple sacks, and I think he had a sack and a half and a fumble, caused a fumble. I don't know why I think first of all, I don't think Houston's a bad team this year. I mean, they're bad, but you know what I mean? They're not like they were last year. I think Houston's going to win some games, and this just feels like a game where Jacksonville's not used to being the team that's supposed to win. They should be probably 10-point favorites in this game. And if not 14. And Jacksonville, it takes a while to learn to win when you're supposed to win. I know that sounds weird, but you know what I'm talking about. And I could definitely see D'Amico coming in with a good game plan defensively and offensively, getting up. They need to get Pierce involved. He hasn't been involved the first 2 weeks at all for the Texans. So he needs 30 carries.
Yeah, and it's not typical when teams get blown out to start the game, they abandon the running game, they start passing. But that really hasn't been the case for Houston. So yeah, I agree with you. They really need to get Dameon Pierce on, and that's the key for them to win any game right now. So,
yeah. All right. Any closing thoughts?
Not really. I'm excited to just watch another week of Cowboy football. I'm really more excited about the college games on Saturday. So
this is a big Saturday, and I'm going to be in a bed and breakfast. Boy, I picked the wrong week to do all that, but yeah, no, this is going to be a big. This is one of the Saturdays you look forward to when it comes to college football.
Yeah, and your buddy Grant will be busy next weekend, so I'm not sure he's going to be able to watch any games.
Oh no, he realized that too when we were coming back from our game. He was like, "Wait a minute," and I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't think that one out there." First off, getting married in football season. That is Intern Nohe. I'm Terry Bennett. We do appreciate you joining us for Outdranked coverage brought to you by Grandeur Pest Solutions. You can find us online on Facebook. Just type in Outdranked coverage, like that page. Find us on Twitter at OutdrankU. You can also email us odtcnfl@gmail.com. Until next time, he's Nohe. I'm Terry. This is Outdranked the coverage on L4 Media.